Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Look at that win streak. Sheesh.
Wait, you're looking at my profile?
Yes.
If you take a look, right before the win streak was my Ephey coaching homework, playing some position 4. I lost both.
Dota's really slow, so your page isn't loading, but I see the Grimstroke class.
Yeah, I tried Spirit Breaker and Grimstroke. I have to say, it has been a bit since I played Spirit Breaker, but Grimstroke, I think I gave it a pretty good run, but my team decided to throw. What would be your priority list as a position 4 player, as like the roamer, as some people call it, the soft support, as the Dota role system calls it? You just mentioned winning the lane. Is that number one priority? What about mid? What about TPing to the safe lane? Occasionally, I would TP to the safe lane with Dugu's guidance, but when I play on my own, I pretty much stay put in the lane. And the moment I start roaming, I don't really know where I'm going. So I'm lacking like a priority list. What do you think it should be?
So I think that that kind of thing comes with experience. The more that you play, it's going to be more natural for you, whether you decide to stay on your lane or rotate. But for the most part, the most amount of impact that you can have as a support player is during the laning stage. Like that is the time in Dota where you can do the most noticeable amount for your team individually. So if you can kind of understand laning and how to best enable your lane partner, I think that's the best way to approach it. But that doesn't apply to all games because a lot of times, depending on what the mid lane matchup is, you might need to sit there a lot. Depending on if the enemy offlane is aggressively playing against your safe lane, you have to always be ready to TP. But I think for the most part, focusing on laning is probably the best thing that you can do. But I think that like the more you play, it'll become very natural for you.
Okay, okay. And then
So the reason why I wanted you to watch replays with me instead of just dive into live gameplay was because there are a lot of concepts when it comes to laning and roaming that you kind of need to pause and think about and talk about. So I wanted you to like be able to ask questions and absorb something instead of just being told what to do.
yeah, honestly, we talked a little bit about it, and maybe we are going to do a live game together. But you're right. There's almost never enough time to think about some of the concepts and actually try to come up with my own idea and then evaluate whether it's good or not. So I love that. Let's start with replays. Would you like to watch one of mine, a public one of yours? What do you think will be good to start with?
I think we should watch the 2 games that you played
Okay.
yesterday, but your page is not loading for me.
Okay. I think I
It's
can
just-
give the game code. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you lost with 62 kills?
So what happened is I feel like I had a pretty good team, but we kind of fell to Spirit Breaker complex where we charge a bit and then we charge a lot and we get overconfident and he sees one guy somewhere on the map and he just charges for it and then we can't keep up and then we get stuck in this fight that just threw the game. So that kind of happened. But overall I don't think it was a bad game, but I think this game in particular there was a lot of material that we could go through.
Why did you get a Guardian Greaves?
So I still feel choice paralysis sometimes when it comes to items. On Grimstroke, I've traditionally built Aether Lens so that I can RW from further away. I can E better. I liked Aether Lens on him. And then I'll either get like a Force Staff or a Glimmer in order to try and keep myself safe, or a Ghost Scepter. But recently, because I've also been playing off lane, I've been thinking, hey, Guardian Greaves is the OP new item. A lot of pros are building it. I've been building it on offlane, so I kind of look around, and if no one else is building it, I'll get it. The same concept with Wraithback before TI. If no one else is getting it, I'm getting it, because this item is strong.
I'm grubbing out Pog.
What do you think about it?
Well, I think it is a really strong item, but it's not a strong item on Grimstroke.
Oh, why?
'cause
Because I'm not using enough of my kit? Or?
It's more so that you have other items that enable your hero a lot more, but also naturally, he's not the aura builder type of hero, right? You're kind of a hero that wants to kite around fights. So for the most part, on Grim, you build Shard, obviously that's core, Force Staff, Lotus Orb, Glimmer Cape, because your job is to cast your spells, cast Inkswell, and make sure you don't get caught, right? So you want to force yourself out, but you also want to come back into the fight, cast another Inkswell, etc., etc. Your hero is more about kind of spamming as many spells as you can without dying. And Guardian Greaves is just a weird item for that. It doesn't really give you anything.
Yeah, I know it's
Like,
not technically correct, but my reasoning is there's a lot of things that should happen at Legend, and then many things that don't actually happen, even though you want them to happen. And so it's better if I do the thing that should be happening if no one else is. So when we're looking at our team, do you see any obvious aura builder in our draft?
not necessarily, but if you do need auras, then if anything, your Spirit Breaker is the one to build it and not you. It's just you're weakening your hero by not building the items that make you stronger and thereby make your team stronger because your hero is the kind of hero that enables your team. Right, like already I'm looking at this game and I see an enemy Luna. The Luna has a Manta style and an Aghanim's. That's not necessarily the best stats, but the 4k gold you spent on a Greaves, you could have built an Ag Scepter, right? And then you kind of just make the Ag's Luna Illusion, you put Inksel on it, and you run it into the Crystal Maiden, and she just dies every time. There's not that much she can do.
But
So that's 4k gold you could have invested somewhere else into your game. I also see that you don't have a force staff. So in this kind of game, obviously, you're going to want to be able to force your teammates out. You want to potentially Lotus Orb off the tracks, off of other people, not just yourself with the Greaves. You need to be able, like as Grim, to do things like that. If you
Okay.
want to play position 4 hero that builds auras, something like Mirana could be really good for you. She's one of the better position 4s at building Greaves, building Wraith Pact, Pipe, etc.
would you say that getting Lotus is more about the bouncing back of spells or more about removing even just one singular annoying spell via the Dispel?
For me, I look at it more as a dispel, but being able to bounce back is quite nice. But you can dispel off like the CM route, the Bounty Hunter track, the Cold Snap. Things like that can be nice. The Time Dilation, of course, which is a very big one, because you have some spell-dependent cores, right? You have the PA, who plays with a lot of dagger. The nice thing is you already have the Dispel in your shard, but having 2 of it is just really good. I think Force Staff was an item you were lacking, also. I don't know how late you got the Octarine core, but I would just say that Grimstroke, as a hero, his spells already do so much for his team that you don't really need to do anything else except guarantee that you can cast as much of them as possible.
Okay, okay. Do you want to watch through any part of the replay, either via I share screen on Discord, or you do?
Yeah, I will share screen with you. Let's watch.
I'll watch from your perspective. So, what I'm getting from you is like, even if, let's say, Guardian Greaves is the best item this patch, and no one else is building it, but they should be, and I could, I shouldn't do it on certain heroes because it griefs my game plan too much, so that I'm not going to be as effective as I could be.
Yeah, but also when you think about it, the Greaves has auras that are passive, right? Grimstroke isn't a hero that's in the center of the fight to be able to spread that aura to his team. The Greaves aura that starts to come in when your teammates are low HP, you're actually not going to be in range of that if you're keeping yourself away from enemies.
Okay.
Like, you're usually kiting in and out, so they're not even benefiting from that part of the Greaves, mostly.
Or if
It's
they
not a
are,
bad idea. I actually like that you're thinking about buying the good items the patch. That's really important. But there are other position 4s that do it so much better than Grimstroke.
Okay. Did
I'm
you
gonna
share
share
yet on
screen
Discord?
with you.
Yeah.
But do you feel more comfortable with melee or range supports?
So my preferred supports right now would be Riki, Clockwork. I like Nick's playstyle. I haven't played him in a bit. And then I kind of like Jakiro and Grimstroke, just kind of casting spells from afar. I used to like Hoodwink, but it's been a bit. So I would say I can play both. And if I see my off lane is going to go melee, I'm trying to take the opposite of that, range. I don't know how often you would be happy with 2 melee on 3-4 or 2 range on 3-4. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, ideally you do the range melee pairing, but it's not the worst thing in the world if you have double range or a double melee. Like you can usually make it work.
Okay.
So I think your starting items are really good, right? You got the stick, you're playing against Crystal Maiden, very spammy, Luna, very spammy. Correct item. I like that you have 2 sentries, so you can play the hard camp block war.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear you place the word. Okay, so for laning, I'm sure you've already played a lot in your legend now, so you probably understand all of these concepts. But the most important part to think about when you go to a lane is, are you going to block the small camp?
Yeah, and usually I do. The reason I didn't do it this time, I think, is because I had a late entry to this spot. and I was aware that they might have a high ground ward on the outpost, and I walked through it belatedly. So I thought, if I place the sentry now, I'm in vision, and when I get a feeling I'm being watched, I figured I'll just wait and I'll just try to step on it at minute 1. So that was kind of my thinking with that. But normally, I try to walk to the small camp. I'll just block it. If they unblock it, I'm either going to try to be there and trade sentries, or I'll get a new one and do it again and again and again.
So in situations like that, it's not the worst thing in the world if you place a sentry without knowing if there's a high ground ward, because if they do deward it, like let's say you place it in a weirder spot than normal and they deward it instantly, like they walk to the side. Like for example, let's say you place it here, right?
Yeah.
And then you see the Crystal Maiden walk from here to here, deward it fast and go back. Then you know that she saw the ward here and you just get a free deward. It's not horrible. Personally, I think the easiest way to go about lanes is that you don't necessarily always have to block the small camp. Right? You can just block it with your body. But if you're a ranged hero like Grimstroke and you're playing against a support like Crystal Maiden with a lot of disables, you walking all the way to the small camp to body block it could potentially mean you die, right? Like, let's say she follows you, casts a couple of spells, and Void joins in.
Yeah.
It's really tough. But let's say you were a Spirit Breaker and you started with boots. You actually don't even need to sentry block it. For the most part, you can just walk to the small camp, block it with your body, go back to the lane. You're not really at risk of dying. So I think it's a good rule of thumb for range supports to just block it from the get-go, just to make it easier for you. And then if it gets dewarded, you can just kind of play the sentry ward battle.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Yeah, I think mostly I was playing every support the same, with the same idea about the blocking. And you're right, I'll be exposed to more harm as a ranged hero. I think I actually end up winning the duel with Crystal Maiden, but that's because I usually prepare to have a big duel, and then I'll have like a Fairy Fire and they don't check my items or something.
Yeah, you also have a stick. All right, you guys went for the first sentry battle. Okay.
Can we watch it in half speed?
You want to slow mo it?
Yes. There we go.
Nice. Okay, so you got the deward. Okay, so a couple of things. Another concept with Grim is whether you start with Inkswell or you start with Stroke of Fate.
Yeah.
So you know that on waves, you need to secure the range creep because it gives the most experience, right?
Yes.
So when you go into a lane, you look at your lane partner, you ask yourself who it is. If it's something like a Mars who has God's Rebuke, he can get his own range creep. So you can actually get Inkswell level 1 if you want to, depending on what's happening. If it's something like a Spirit Breaker, he's going for the charge.
Yeah. I think we end up getting him. The question is if it's worth it, but no, we don't get him because I had to stay away from Faceless because Faceless was looking at me. That's why I couldn't follow up.
I mean, he probably should have just stayed on the wave, tried to get denies and all of that, but because Void came too, it's not the worst thing.
Yeah.
Both cores ended up leaving.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I was saying is if your lane partner can secure their range creeps level 1, you don't need to get Stroke of Fate. But something like a Spirit Breaker can get denied. So on this kind of lane, as Grim, I would get Stroke of Fate.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I would just use it to get the range creep. So that's another thing you have to think about when playing this hero is just which spell are you taking.
I wonder how many range
Will the
creeps he
sentry
lost.
ward?
He was really on top of wanting to go with those sentry wards all the time. But this time, he suffered from the fate that you said can befall you as a ranged hero when you like step up to the enemy camp.
But I mean, that's good. Killing Crystal Maiden is not a bad thing at all. All right, let's look at the last hits. I mean, it looks like Void is farming more than the Spirit Breaker, but that's just a consequence of him leaving more often than not.
Yeah.
But you guys are doing quite well in this lane. Like, I would say that this is good. Your camp is still blocked.
Yeah, let me see. Why was that? I think I ended up... I think I got a sentry coming in now. And because Crystal Maiden was so fast dewarding every time, I figured she must have a ward somewhere. So I think I end up doing a random fish attempt with my sentry and thus not deblocking it for a long time. Kind of bad.
Yeah, it's actually fine to not have it unblocked right now, just because like the lane has been in Spirit Breaker's favor the entire time.
That's true.
And she hasn't necessarily tried to pull or anything like that. And here, you got it here. That's nice. This is a really common deward spot. Something you can also do, by the way, for the
Yeah.
small camp is you just kind of body block it for the first couple of waves, and then you just place the sentry here towards the end. And you can find their big camp block more often than not.
Right. Yeah, because it actually covers the little left outcropping of the hard camp, so you get like 50-50 on deblocking your hard camp, right?
Yeah. So, do you buy raindrops at any point on this lane?
Dubu told me to always buy raindrop on every support. I don't know if that's an oversimplification at my behest or if that's something he believes in. I don't know if that's something everyone believes in. I think I end up buying it, but I'm actually not 100% sure. I should, right?
Yeah.
Because of Maiden?
You should. So we talk about how winning the lane can do so much for your game early on, right? I think that getting an early magic wand isn't necessary in a lane like this.
Yeah.
Like she is using a lot of spells, but a stick would have been enough.
Yeah.
That is a lot of extra gold that you could have just bought the raindrop with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the raindrop is a cool item, right? Because it gives you passive mana regen, which your
Yeah.
hero desperately needs, and it lets you kind of bait spells, stay on the lane longer. I would say get it almost every game instead of a wand, unless you're against something like a PA or a bristleback.
Yeah, makes sense. I think sometimes I got undisciplined with my thinking about magic wand and its waste. I'm like, those branches in my inventory, like some
Yeah.
kind of completionist mistaken sense of efficiency.
Yeah. So around this timer, I actually know what you're talking about because sometimes I just do it as well to free up an inventory
Yeah,
slot
yeah.
just because it looks really appealing. But for the most part, early game, like every bit of gold counts,
Yeah.
especially when you're in the laning stage. So if you're just throwing 150 gold on a magic wand recipe where you're not going to save up the extra charges, that's 150 gold that could have gone to something like a raindrop that could mean the difference between life or death in
Yeah.
a skirmish.
Yeah, makes sense.
So at this moment, around this minute, yeah, you do go to the camp.
They get the stack though,
Yeah.
so we got the kill.
It's good that you got the kill, but also if you know that the small camp is unblocked at this point, you should always just be walking towards that area, which you
Yeah.
did around the time that the enemy support's going to stack, because single pulls are okay. If the enemy support gets single pulls off, it doesn't really mean that much, right? Maybe they deny a couple of last hits, but it's gonna double wave and push like all the way back to your tower over here.
Yeah.
Whereas these double pulls, the stacked pulls, they're so much harder to deal with because
Yeah.
it gives the enemy carry a free wave, and then you and your core have to go there to soak up the experience. Or sometimes your core doesn't even do that, so it's a missed wave. So for like always prioritize around second 50 to be in that area and stop the sock.
Yep.
So it's quite good that you killed the Crystal Maiden, but like ideally in that situation, someone would have also walked up and body blocked that
Yeah.
stack.
Yeah, I saw at 4:53 you were looking, and I didn't immediately go there. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna be too late.
That's okay. Honestly, it's there's so much stuff that you have to consider that it's easy to forget basic things.
Yeah.
So can you tell me like around what timer are we looking at right now? Like what's the important objective coming up as a position for?
Let's see. So, I would say, I know that even the 4-minute rune, but especially the 6-minute power rune, is something that supports should be helping mid with, and that's going to give you a better, basically 3 better lanes, or at least 2, because the stronger mid can then gank your cores and stuff. But I'm always afraid to leave because I guess, especially as a 5, but as a 4, I should be a little bit more okay. I don't think Spirit Breaker's going to die as easily. And yet I'm afraid to leave for 2 reasons. One, I'm afraid he's going to die in a 1v2. And the second one is I'm afraid I'm going to go mid, so is an enemy support, and then I get both of us killed, whereas before he might be playing safe. So basically the fear of failure, I'm going to mid, and I guess I'm not sure the exact mechanics and approach angle to go mid for it to be an effective gank.
Okay. So you don't even need to gank usually around the power runes. It's just incredibly helpful as a 4 that pre-minute 6 you start making your way towards the rune just to secure it from the enemy. Now in this game, it doesn't matter too much because you're against an Invoker. Invoker, the most that he can do versus your Void Spirit is deny the power rune with his Exort, but with his Forge Spirit.
Yeah.
But typically, it's not really a bottle hero or a hero who goes to pick up runes. So in this game in particular, it's not something that you would be thinking about. But generally, it is something you always want to have in your mind so you can kind of build that muscle memory and that habit to make your way to that area around minute 6. Which means that around minute 5, you want to prepare for your rotation to the power rune. So at this point, you would hope that your large camp is unblocked. You want to be able to either do a pull or kind of drag the creep wave, do any kind of shenanigans to make sure that the lane is pushing back for your offlaner before you go to the rune. So around minute 5 is when you start thinking about that. Or let's say like minute 4, second 30 is when you start thinking about how to bring the lane back.
Yeah, so...
But in this game, it doesn't matter that much because of Invoker. But let's say it was a Shadow Fiend, right?
Yeah. At 440 is my parting gift pull, and then I start heading towards mid.
No, you stay on the lane, right? You just need to start walking there around second 30 because you want to either place a sentry to see if the enemy ward is in that area. So, sorry if this is like a lot of concepts at the same time.
No, it's good.
Yeah. So the enemy mid laner will usually have their vision around minute 6 or 7 and 8, like when the power runes start playing on this side. Why? Because it's closer to the enemy offlane, which is usually where they get ganked from, because it's usually the position 4 who rotates mid. So when you're ready to make a mid rotation or secure a rune potentially, you want to also kind of have a sentry with you and just place it somewhere here, so that either you and your mid laner can deward it, or just so you know that there's not vision on you, so you can potentially make a play.
Would I come from enemy outpost jungle, the river, or my ancients?
It just depends, right? Like they could scout you out on this ward, but normally you'd be paying a lot of attention to the enemy support. Like if you see them leaving at some point, you look at their inventory, they have a ward, they come back and they don't have it, they most likely placed it here.
Yeah.
If you've been playing around the pool area and they haven't been moving towards you in a way that shows that it's warded, you can just walk down from here, you can walk from here. It doesn't matter all that much. You can basically tell. Let's say you start walking to secure the rune, and then the other support, the enemies, the 5, starts walking with you. Like you did it off vision and they show up too. They most likely saw you on the sword and they came to help.
And
So
just
you
walking
have
through the
to-
river is fine?
Yeah, it doesn't matter too much, right? You just kind of want to hide behind a tree here, like wait for the rune to spawn, come up. If the enemy mid laner comes to it, you and your mid laner can get a kill. If it's not there, you did your part, right? The rune spawn on the other side. Unlucky, it is what it is.
Okay.
But that's the stuff you start looking at. Water rune rotations are not that important. People used to focus on them heavily back in the day, but it's kind of bad to leave your lane too early.
Okay.
But I mean, in some cases, you can even do that. Like, let's say that you're a fast hero with boots, you're playing against an enemy Shadow Fiend, you want to screw him over, you take his water runes. That can happen, but it's not really something to worry about, right? You just start thinking about it at minute 6.
Okay. And what percentage of time would you say you would activate a smoke on yourself to walk mid so that you surely evade detection and you can turn it into a real kill?
So, if you think that your rotation will secure a kill, then I would just buy it when I'm ready to rotate. I would send a smoke over early. So, like, for example, let's look at this mid lane matchup. Void Spirit hits 6, Invoker is 5. If you've been paying attention to the mid and you see that your Void Spirit is 6, or he's close to hitting 6, you click on him and you see he's leveling up, you can send yourself a smoke just so that the second he hits 6, you're ready to play with him.
Yeah.
You go there, you get a quick kill on the Invoker, and then you can go back. Also, a lot of nice things about these early rotations with heroes like Void Spirit or Queen of Pain who have high damage, high mobility, is that sometimes you can just camp the enemy mid laner, like you wait for them to respawn and you kill them again. That can happen a lot of the time, which if it does happen, then you've done a very, it's very good job.
And
But yeah.
if we do that and our 3 dies, it's still kind of okay, right? Because mid is kind of important.
Oh, mid is definitely very important, but you also have to think about the heroes that you're trying to shut down.
Yeah, which
so-
heroes, like Underlord could maybe be safely left, or a Spirit Breaker, and some heroes are easier to kill mid or not.
I would say that a hero like Invoker, if you're leaving to kill him, is always going to be good, because this hero is not a hero that rotates very well in the early mid game unless he's playing Quaswex. And even then, his movements need to happen with his team. So something like Invoker, if he dies twice mid, you know he's not really going to have much impact in the game, because he's just going to have to sit back, farm camps, and hope that he gets Sunstrike kills. But if you shut down this hero, you make his gameplay so difficult. So if you were a roaming support, Grimstroke is not the best roamer, to be honest. But like, let's say you were something like a Spirit Breaker or an Earth Spirit or a Clockwork, I would place heavy emphasis on killing something like an Invoker over and over again.
Okay.
Because it's also just a surefire kill, isn't it? The hero is slow, not that
Yeah.
tanky early on, and you have something like a Void Spirit mid.
When does he usually get Ghost Walk?
Um, it depends, but he's not going to have it for a while. Most invokers probably get it around level 7 or 8. But even then, if you're uncertain about that, you can get a dust. It's only 80 gold. Doesn't mean that much.
Yep, makes sense.
And another hero this applies to is something like a Storm Spirit, right? Storm Spirit, if you're playing against an enemy Storm, it should kind of shift the way that you look at the game. Because the way you look at that game is, can I rotate on this hero before he hits level 6? So you start to plan the way that you're going to leave the lane and move around the map depending on the mid laner levels. So there are certain mid heroes that kind of force you to think about the way that you're going to roam differently. But these are like very specific cases, right? Things like Lina, Sniper, they're hard to gank. They stay at a very long range. They don't really cross the river. Things like Leshrac, ganking Leshrac can go very wrong as a melee hero. Like that hero does so much damage, and he can just kill you with Pulse Nova and Diabolic Edict. So some heroes are easier to kill than others, right? So I would say Invoker and Storm Spirit, things like that, Shadow Fiend, place a heavy emphasis on trying to kill them early on, because it really slows down their game.
Okay. Okay. And item-wise, this game, right? Eventually, I saw that Luna is going for magic build. Triple Sage Mask into Voidstone, some kind of new meta. And then he went for Ags and he just played off magic. I actually looked at his damage breakdown at the end of the game. He had 0 damage from Moonglaves on enemy heroes. He just cast his ult and that's it. So
I mean, it worked out. Good for him.
Yeah, it worked out. I'm
But,
very happy for him.
Yeah, but like Magic Luna, you can counter that quite well, honestly, because it's so dependent on Eclipse. And if anyone on your team, let's say your Spear Breaker, builds something like a pipe, it's really easy to play into.
So,
but it looks like this game went ultra late, and that's where you guys started to lose.
Yeah. What if I ask teammates for a pipe and they don't build it? You still wouldn't have me build it on Grim.
No, you do not build it on Grim.
Okay, so
like,
what
Grim
can I do?
Can do a lot.
What if I have all the info and I see what's happening? Okay, I have to worry about Bounty Hunter's track, Chronosphere, her Lucent Beam ulti, and Maiden. Like, which part do I play in this position? I think maybe a Force Staff to get people out of Crystal Maiden ulti. And then I don't think I can do anything about Void. I'm thinking maybe I'll get an Aeon disc against him later, or I have to be really far away. You mentioned Lotus against Bounty, and you mentioned Axe for Luna.
That was just something looking at the scoreboard, right? I need to see how the game progresses. But like looking at the 2 drafts that you guys have, you shouldn't be concerned about most of these things, because you guys have Grimstroke paired with Spirit Breaker and Void Spirit. You and Void Spirit alone can just take over the entire map. Something like a Bounty Hunter, just a dust on you or Void, Inkswell on him, and then you can pop him every single time, right? You can just play aggressively. For example, on this mid lane, you want to make your way over there at some point, right? You just place an Obs here, a Sentry here, and you just play around this Void. If you see the Bounty Hunter show, Void has the reach to be able to just kill him instantly. Your Spirit Breaker is something that combos with you very well too. So in terms of early mid game pressure, your team it's like far superior, because Invoker needs time, like we mentioned. Void is kind of a farming hero up until he gets stronger, and Luna just plays on Eclipse. Like, that's all she can do in this game. So they had cooldowns to exploit, whereas you guys didn't.
We had such a better draft. I could just put Inkswell on Spirit Breaker or Void and go kill him. And I think we do. We can kind of maybe go further in the replay. We talked a bit about the laning and watch some of the moments. Maybe they were like, we couldn't do a lot more, but we could skip ahead to maybe minute 10 or unfold a bit.
We can take a look. But so at first glance, if I were playing Grim in this game, the 2 items that I would build are Aether Lens and Shard.
Aether Lens and Shard.
So Aether Lens on Grim, I feel, is core. I don't know when you got it, because I did see that you have an Octarine core, so you had to have an Aether Lens at some point.
I didn't get it this time because I was going with the Greaves, as mentioned earlier. Aether Lens, I normally always build it on Grim. I think every time, but my chat's always like, you like Aether Lens too much, it sucks. But they also told me Blade Mail with Axe against Wind Ranger was bad, someone said. Spoiler, it was good.
That's fair. That's fair. So I think some heroes in Dota are so enabled by Aether Lens that it's almost unskippable. Unless you get that cast range item, whatever it's called, the Eye of the Vizier. and you have arcane boots, you can kind of maybe skip doing it.
Okay.
But something like a Grimstroke, you can have so much impact this game just by being able to ink spell targets while staying out of the fight. You know, not getting chronoed, staying out of Crystal Maiden's line of fire, staying out of a potential eclipse.
Yeah.
So just being able to press ink spell on your Void or Spirit Breaker can make or break fights. Obviously, the Shard, it's probably one of the best Shard upgrades in the game. It's a strong dispel.
Really?
For 1400, yeah, it's for 1400 gold. It's a strong dispel. You remove everything. You remove time dilation. You remove track. You remove cold snap, frostbite. You can put it in your Spirit Breaker, and he can charge in fearlessly, and you guys can just kill over and over. So if you hit those two timings, like the onslaught that you will have just paired with either of your cores, is incredible. And we haven't even talked about PA, right? It's so good on PA because this hero is dependent on her BKB and not getting stunned, so it gives her a little bit of extra leeway as well. Yeah, and then
would you get Octarine just to get more ink swells after that?
I mean, super late game, sure. Usually you don't really get to a point where you can buy Octarine.
We do down in Legends. We do.
So usually that doesn't happen, but I wouldn't have that be like a third or fourth item. For the most part, like I mentioned, you wanna build support items. So you'd want something like a Force Staff, something like a Blink for yourself, maybe, so you can get good Soulbinds. Soulbind is excellent versus Faceless Void. It stops his leap.
What's good for Faces?
Faceless Void, Soulbind, it stops his time locks. So if you can get the leash off of him in fights, it's so difficult for him to play against that. So some people would build Blink just so they can get the leash on the targets that they want.
Okay.
But like I mentioned, you want to just make sure that you're casting as many spells as possible in a fight without dying. So building mobility is something that you should really focus on, especially as a range support.
It always feels weird to me building Blink on Rubik or Grim. I see that people do it, and I'm always thinking, well, I could save 2k.
No,
I feel like after blinking in, I could be in trouble.
Yeah, but you could also make a really sick play. You could also save yourself by blinking out, right? Like if you see an enemy coming near you, you just blink away. It's a really good item to consider because conceptually, most supports, they don't really need items to make them strong. They just need to be able to cast their spells correctly. Whereas cores are more dependent on items to be able to play the game. Supports just want to make sure that they're not in danger. That's why they tend to itemize differently naturally, even if it's not without the concept of, I'm going to help my team. So even if you weren't thinking about your PA or your Void Spirit, you should still think about a Blink and a Force Staff for yourself to save yourself.
Okay. Yeah. And to what degree do you think I am allowed to blink in to a risky position to get the perfect skill combo off and then die? Because with Clockwork, I know what I'm getting into. If I'm hookshotting in...
Don't die. I think that like dying early in a team fight and staying in it till the very end and casting spells as many times as you can is the biggest difference between good supports and bad supports in your MMR bracket. Because a lot of people have this wrong idea about supporting, that it's okay if they die. You know, they'll cast one spell and then they'll die, but it's okay because they're a support. That's not the case.
Not anymore. If it ever
not
was.
Anymore. You need to be able to just be in the fight for as long as possible, especially position 4 heroes. They tend to... Like, these fights in the mid-game especially can go for, like, 20 seconds, 25 seconds. Yeah. If you have a hero with utility in it, it makes a difference. Like, you're the stun, you're the CC, you're the catch, you're the silence, you're the one giving Inkswell.
How much would you help a buddy if they're in a bad spot? Do you instantly turn 360 degrees and walk away? Or would you, like, be, well, maybe I can as a 4 die to save my 1? Even though he made his bed and now he has to sleep in it, he's in a bad spot.
No, you say if it's your carry or your mid laner, die for them.
Okay.
You have to try. If you've assessed the situation and you trying to help would result in both of you dying, that's okay.
Then you walk away.
Yeah, but if you can give your life to save them, you should always do that.
Okay, but for the 3, no.
For the 3, I mean, yeah, you should too. They're gonna be angry if you don't, but I mean, I care a lot less about them typically, honestly. Yeah. So another concept is like this whole idea of dying for people. Like in the mid game where games get kind of tough, you want to position yourself as a support, often in these cliff areas, right? Like this, things like that. This while your carry is farming. That way, if the enemies smoke into them, you're going to be the one who breaks the smoke. They see it and they run away.
Yes.
That's also a concept that you have to learn. as a 4. So ideally in those situations, it's always the 5 breaking the smoke and dying. But if your 5 isn't doing it, you have to take it upon yourself to be the hero that bodies the smokes for your carry.
Okay.
It makes a huge difference, especially in the late game.
Would you want to skip forward and check a few moments? We can come back here and maybe just like hit a couple of replay times and find a situation where I should have been doing that based on the minimap location.
Okay, maybe we should just fast forward. Let's do player view.
Yeah.
So when does this game start to get good? Do you remember, like, for your team, where you start to feel like you guys secured a very good lead?
I feel like we're killing a lot. Like, well, I played it yesterday, so it's pretty recent. I can't tell you the exact timestamp now. I think at some point, Void Spirit comes down here. I think we get a kill now.
Okay.
Oh no, he said there was a ward here and then he left. He pinged below the small camp. He's like, they must have a ward here, and they left.
Okay. I think he should have stuck around. I'm on your player view, so we don't see what they see.
You want to show if they did have a ward?
Yeah, let's just do free camera.
I think you have to play for 1 second.
Okay. Okay, so when he said there was a ward, did you go and deward it?
Well, he pinged below the small camp that there was a ward there, so there was nothing to deward. Like, he already left. I didn't figure like it matters anymore.
So, yeah, I can kind of understand that, but if there's a ward or if you're told there's a ward, you kind of want to get rid of it.
Yeah, he didn't tell me where, so he just pinged below the small camp and then he left. So I thought, I don't think they have an observer ward there, so his data is corrupt.
Okay, that makes sense. So in that case, anyway, usually at this stage of the game, you want to bring yourself over some sentries. And the 2 most common places that you're going to place the sentries as a position for are either here in the center, so you can catch a ward that's here or here.
Right.
Or here, right? Because this cliff is the most common spot that supports tend to ward at this stage of the game.
We may not have had, we may not have had many sentries because we were against Bounty Hunter in another lane.
That kind of sucks. I hate when that happens, actually.
Yeah.
I understand that. But still, you want to be dewarding this part of the map anyway.
Yeah.
For 2 reasons. One, you want to make sure that you can scout the enemy mid-rotations, because this is about the time they start rotating. Invoker is different. He functions differently than most mid laners, but you need to be ready for when that's going to happen to you. And the other thing is you need to start setting up for pushing this tower. So you kind of were told the order of objectives that you should focus on, right?
Yeah, this tower between 8 to 12 minutes or sometimes a bit later. I see in pro games, they bring up to 4 people. They bring even the offlaner sometimes, or at least the 4 and the 5 are there, and then the 2, and then they end up pushing that tower down. But that's not what happens in my games often. The theory is not usually followed. You'll have people like 5-man TPing to defend the safe lane tower, that kind of thing.
Okay. Oh, I just noticed you have 3 in Phantom Embers, 3 in Inksel.
I've never done that before.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in a second. So I understand the frustration of not being able to get your team to play around objectives, but I guess at this point you have to kind of make these calls, because once you get this tower, your PA, her game changes entirely, right? You guys force Void out of these 2 camps. He gets a lot more scared because there's more access to finding him from your Void Spirits. And you as a Grim are suddenly freed up to play the map. You can either play mid, you can play top, like whatever it is that you feel like doing. All of that starts to happen once this tower goes down. You can do that safely and comfortably.
Yeah.
So usually this just happens with like a mid player rotation. If it's something like a Spirit Breaker who doesn't necessarily push the best, he doesn't really kill waves either.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to get the creeps there. But the Void Spirit would come in, get a kill. You guys would place a ward here, ideally. Maybe a ward here, depending on whether or not they have a sentry or if you feel like they're going to come in from here. But like I said, the enemy mid laner is not going to rotate in. It's an invoker. For the most part, you can get objectives unpunished. So you would just place that aggressive vision and you would place heavy, heavy, heavy emphasis on this tower.
Yeah.
It's really important. So in this case, I would honestly say that Stroke of Fate is a spell that you would have focused on.
Because my
Or you
Spirit
should have
Breaker's
focused on.
wave clear is so bad.
Yes, but also because you're playing position 4 Grimstroke and not position 5 Grimstroke.
Ah.
At some points, you want to just be able to get farm for yourself, right? You want to finish up your lens early. You want to be able to do this and that. But this is a personal thing. It's honestly, it's not bad. It's not bad to play on this. It's a very good kill build. It kills things like Faceless Void so easily.
Yeah, I liked it because I had so many suitable targets for a WE combo. Since I have 3 divers, that's why I did like this. But usually I was maxing Q and E with just 1 point in W, and farming more. I think I made myself too, let's say, irrelevant in terms of farming this game for the situation. Because Spirit Breaker, he's more prone to leave, so it makes sense for me to pick up the slack sometimes. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, so I think that there's a fine line that you have to tread sometimes, which is thinking about your personal gameplay versus what it is that you want to do all the time.
Yeah.
So I think position 4s do need to be a little bit greedier. Like, you want to hit your shard timing, you want to hit your Aether Lens timing. So in order to do that, I would place like more emphasis on Stroke of Fate over Phantom's Embrace, even though it sounds kind of strange because you're playing against Faceless Void. But Faceless Void should die to your lockdown if Void Spirit rotates over, which is what we were talking about anyway, right? And I would just max Inkswell always if I'm playing with a Void Spirit.
Yeah, makes sense.
That should be the first spell that you max just so you can make him stronger. With that spell on him, with his step in and his nukes, he can pretty much blow anybody up, which is kind of what your goal should be for the mid game, like conceptually, right?
At 5, would you be 203 or 113?
What did you mention?
At level 5, would you have a 203 skill build or 113?
I would do 2 and 2, level 5.
212.
Yeah. But I do mention that if I play position 5 Grimstroke, I skill him differently. In most cases, I don't put anything more than 1 for Stroke of Fate, and that's usually just for the range creep secure.
Oh, yeah.
But if I'm playing position 4, like, Grimstroke is a hero that farms so well. So well. And he wave clears, which is something that's really important. I don't want to bore you with the Dota 2 theory craft
No, I love it.
talking about wave clear. Yeah. I really don't want to bore you with that, but like, just there's a lot that we can say about wave clear, but mostly nobody on your lane pushes. No one kills creeps.
And I try to take support.
It can be you who does that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, that's it. It can be you. You can be the person to compensate for Spiritbreaker's lack of abilities to push creeps. And also, Spiritbreaker, do you see that he's mid? He's playing with the Void Spirit right now, right? So are you. But Spiritbreaker is the kind of offlaner who rotates. So it actually frees up the map more for you to farm the lane. And that's where Stroke of Fate comes in.
Yeah, it makes sense. Usually, the draft starts, I've got like 1 minute to start thinking about what mid-game items I want, to think about all 10 heroes in a constellation I've probably never played before. It makes so much sense when you're saying that now.
Yeah, so I don't want to overwhelm you with concepts or theories. I just think that these things should be mentioned like lightly, and if it's something that you can remember for later on, that's really good. But yeah, there are just always things as a support. You're kind of asking yourself questions more often than you would be as a core. Because cores, their first, 15 minutes of gameplay is a lot more AFK, it's a lot more autopilot. Whereas supports, you have to be very proactive about what you're doing. Like, am I planning on rotating? Am I planning on stacking? Do I need to build 1 billion sentries for this lane? Do I need to kind of cut a wave, like cut a tree path in order to cast my spells? Like, if you're a Clockwork, you'd want to come in from here. There's just a lot of things that you're asking yourself. And most of this thinking happens in the first 15 minutes. Then it becomes a lot more autopilot-y as a support. It just becomes spellcasting and playing with your team. And it kind of becomes the opposite for cores at that case.
In this game, yeah, that makes sense because they need to think about how to counter the other core's items and stuff. In this game, stacking the Ancients would have been really useful, wouldn't it, for PA?
Absolutely. And Grimstroke is one of the best heroes at stacking Ancients from position 4. Because you can just Stroke of Fate this camp and then hit this camp, right? You press Stroke at 53, hit this camp at 55, and you walk down.
So
and you can just do that a couple of times, and then you've given your PA a really good advantage already.
Again, sometimes I want to do that, and then I'm afraid to leave my 3. But should I just do it, or is it always a depends situation?
It depends. Like, if you guys are winning the lane, then stay on the lane, right? Focus on runes. But if you guys are losing the lane, it's something that you can do that takes up time that's productive instead of kind of wasted time where you're sitting back and doing nothing. So in a lost lane, I default to stacking quite often as a ranged hero.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I had a clockwork game with a Legion commander recently. It was kind of a bad game. I prefer not to watch it. But we were losing against an anti-mage Skywrath. And both of us are out of mana against anti-mage. We didn't have enough kill power. I would lock him out of my surround with the cogs. And well, we were just kind of losing it, so maybe I could have just tried to help pull back the lane and then go stack repeatedly.
That is something you can always do. So I would say just think about it depending on whether or not you've won or lost the lane. Or if you stomp the lane really hard and you have nothing to do, that's something that you can do as well.
Okay,
but
makes sense.
Honestly, you shouldn't really be nervous about leaving your offlaner or how they're going to react. Like, if they start to react poorly, you kind of just mute them. Because doing the right thing in Dota is better than trying to cater to somebody who's, like, a child.
Yeah. Yeah,
but I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from. Like, I do have this issue in pubs, too, where I worry too much about the mood of the other player that I start to play differently.
Yeah.
But in a perfect world, you don't do that, right?
Once I start like getting bad mood from a teammate, I just mute them, not because I hate them, but just because I can't focus anymore. I hate it when people are fighting, so...
I understand. I'm the same way. But that's why support players are the Giga Chads of Dota 2. You know, they bring the team together, positivity, encouragement, make sure everybody's happy.
Yeah, I don't always have that energy, but...
yeah, I get it. So yeah, I just want to mention something real quick.
Okay.
Your team brought basically 4 heroes to this mid rotation, and you killed the Luna and the Invoker, which is awesome, and you're hitting the mid tower. But the Faceless Void is happily farming on the spot lane.
Yeah.
He has access to this camp, he has access to these camps, and his tower is incredibly healthy.
Yeah.
So even though on paper that was a great trade, these heroes don't really have the damage to take down this tower.
Yeah. Wrong lane.
So yeah, yes, unfortunately yes, wrong lane to play on, because if you had brought the same kind of pressure down here, Void would have been kicked away to the side of the map where Luna is playing already.
So you think it's a whole different pace of the game. If you see this and you were spoiled to the fact that we end up losing it, you would say Faceless was given too much space in the start of the game.
Yes, but also this is just kind of going back to what we were talking about this tower needing to go down. And in a team like yours where the tower damage is very low, you want to make sure that your first team rotation, you prioritize it being on the correct lane.
Yep.
So it's not bad if the mid tower goes down first. It's just as a consequence of this, like this is what we're seeing the Void do.
Yeah.
And this is a hero that you would be concerned about because he has the potential to win this game later on with the Invoker, right? The Chronosphere into the Cataclysm is one of the oldest and best combos in Dota.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious when this tower actually starts to go down.
Not early enough.
Do you see how this Void is just kind of chilling on this lane forever?
I hate it.
Normally it doesn't happen like that. He has so much access.
Well,
to
when's
things.
the last time you watched Legend games? Look at this, we're 5 man top.
It's been a while, honestly.
I remember
but
what
yeah,
I said
you guys took a tower. Like you guys took the top tower. But the problem is, it's just not the ideal tower. So you guys have proven, right? You've proven that bringing all of your heroes to a lane will
Good
take
tower.
a tower down and you will kill people.
I remember what I said. I was like, okay, I don't know what's happening, but we're 5 man and we took the offlane tower. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I guess that's just legendary. You know, you take your wins where you can get them. Like winning a fight and getting a tower, not a bad thing. But it's just that ideally you want to kind of direct your team to which tower you actually want to get.
And if it
so
doesn't
if you
work,
feel like
it doesn't work, but you can at least try every game. Always have hope, right?
yeah. So there's actually you can subtly bring people to the lane that you ward, because Dota players tend to gravitate around vision, right? They play around vision for the most part. If they see that a side of the map is bright and warded, they will walk there. So if you ward around the bottom tower, your Void Spirit might think, hey, wait, I see this Crystal Maiden, let me come kill her. And then your Spirit Breaker charges in, he's like, oh, I'm here too. And then, oh, look, your team's there, you're hitting the tower. So if you feel like they're not listening, just use that, psychology to bring them there.
That makes sense. So when we end up throwing the game at 30 minutes or 34 minutes, it's because Spirit Breaker had vision of Crystal Maiden that he thought he should 1v5 dive. So we should have never placed that ops ward and he wouldn't have felt tempted.
Okay, I need to see this situation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead and check it.
But I'm just kind of watching this Void because it feels like he's getting a game that he shouldn't get. Because
Yeah.
like on paper, your heroes pressure him so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's minute 16 and the tower is still up.
Super healthy.
Yep. Oh,
Yeah.
you guys are fighting. Your PA is godlike.
Yep. But the only reason we lost this is because we wanted to lose. Like we won too much in the early game, so people just get overconfident. They can't shake themselves out of the mindset.
Hmm.
After this game, I had to take a long pause and ponder life. I was very discouraged, and then
Oh my god, you.
I went on the 6-game win streak because I started to actually communicate with team again. I went
Okay.
top. I asked people like to defend top, or I asked like I always ask like a core, can you take this area? But then when they don't and our safe lane tower is dying, I TP there. Do you think that's, or I walk there? Is that wrong?
It's not wrong. It's not wrong. So long as your TP is available, it's okay. If you're talking about this circumstance right now, I did want to mention that around 10 seconds ago, the Invoker showed bottom from your player view.
Yeah, can we
So-
go back to it?
Okay, let me just rewind a little bit.
Okay, so my TP is on a 39-second cooldown. There's 3 people here.
So your team,
Oh yeah, Invoker showed
Invoker?
for a second.
yeah. So Invoker is a hero that should always die if he shows on the map. Pre-travels, pre-blink, pre-BKB. If you have heroes like Spirit Breaker and Void Spirit, that's something that you guys can always run down. So this unfortunately doesn't have that much to do with you because it's just a matter of team priority right now. But generally, like as a 4, if you want to make movements on the map, you want to make the correct one or lead your team into it. And we've talked about this side of the map being open for so long. And Invoker shows on this side of the map. I guess at this point, if I were you, I would just ping, 10 seconds on my TP. I hope I have a smoke available. Like, be ready to go on this Invoker. You just set up for him, you wait for the charge, and you make it happen. And then when this Invoker dies, you can finally get this tower, which honestly needed to be on a long time ago.
If you were the chess master here, which player would you place top now from our team?
I'd ignore top.
Just ignore it.
Yeah, it's not that important. Like, you getting farm on the top lane isn't bad. Like I mentioned, Grimstroke has certain timings with a draft like this that make him so strong. So Aetherland's Shard, whatever helps you get there, always going to be a good thing.
But I don't get it, Ephey. Why does our top lane tower not matter, but their bot lane does? It's mirrored, no?
So your top lane tower right now, it's not in danger of dying. Your team is running around the map. If they were ever to show top on their heroes and push the tower, you guys would be able to get there instantly. Right? Whereas the bottom, I'm talking about the gameplay that you should prioritize. So bringing all of your heroes to this lane where you guys already have the tower taken down, it's not in danger of dying, and you see the Invoker, who is the highest priority kill right now, because he's the damage dealer on the team. You should be able to shift your directions over there. We also talked about Void being able to farm his side of the map for too long, just finally being able to take it away, potentially pushing this tower, taking the outpost. This enemy team is not a Roche threat. Like, you can concede the top side of the map, like, theoretically, if the enemy team isn't capable of taking Roche quickly. You guys can always be ready for that. So being able to take the bottom side, just denying the jungle completely, having access of this cliff, always going to be a good thing, right? Because you have these heroes that hunt so well. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well?
Yeah. I guess, so let me try to repeat and see 2 of the concepts I think you tried to teach, and you tell me if I'm on point or not, or if I'm a little off. So part of the reason bottom lane tower is more important to them than our top lane tier 1 is to us is because we still have our off lane tower. So those are in close proximity to each other. So there's more, there's more space for us there that we take away from them for sure, because we can still TP to that off lane, whereas the opponent is going to feel loath to play around our tier 1 safe lane tower now because they have no fallback point.
Kind of. So the more important concept to understand about this tower in particular is that these two camps, here and here, they become your camps. Usually in Dota, this game is kind of stompy. Your PA is godlike already and has been roaming, which a little bit unusual, but it's nice, of course, when this is happening. Usually, your carry will come to this lane, right? Because it's actually safer for them to be there when this tower is taken down. Because they have the farm that pushes to them. They have these two camps. They have this cliff ward here, and they have this cliff ward that Void Spirit is going to be playing around. So they can just sit here for as long as they want. What ends up happening is when this tower is gone and your team is ahead and your team has the kill pressure advantage with heroes like Dara and Void, is that what goes on is that Invoker and Faceless Void and Luna are suddenly sharing this triangle. Because coming here is death. So all of these heroes are confined to this side of the map, and if they ever show pushing this tower, you guys can just kill them because you have the net worth lead.
So the important part isn't whether the offlane tower is alive, but the fact that we are leading and have a diving aggression team.
Mm-hmm. You don't want to think about your towers so much as you're thinking about their towers, if that makes sense. Like, you don't want to think about your offlane tower. This tower is whatever. This tower doesn't mean shit.
Well,
right?
but doesn't Faceless gain access to our hard camp and small camp in the top left if our tier 1 tower dies?
Yeah, but there's no way he can play there. Like, if the Faceless starts to go there, he gets charged. Like, there's no way that these heroes can play in this... Yeah, I mean, top left?
Yeah, these two. These two camps become
yeah, but then Invoker.
Radiant.
Yeah, but then Invoker, where does he play? Then Invoker and Void are sharing the same camps. They have a lot less net worth to go about, whereas you have all of this side of the map and you have the ability to walk into here and kill them because you have the net worth advantage.
Okay, I'm trying to value the difference between our tier 1 and theirs and try to have a roadmap where I can consistently identify whether their tier 1 or our tier 1 safe lane tower is more important. And I still feel like I'm not 100% getting your meaning about when their tier 1 death is more important or our tier 1 survival and death.
So let me rephrase. Okay, so this tower here, if you have the capability to defend it as a team, you should. Like, let's say they're pushing and you see their push.
Let's say you can trade them. You can either choose, you trade them, they both go from 100 life to 0, or they both stay at 100 life.
Okay,
right?
so your question is in the chance of a trade, like, when do you choose to trade your safe lane tower for their safe lane tower?
Because everything can be reversed, right? Like, if we can defend our tier 1, then they can defend theirs. If our net worth and our threat level is equal and everything else is the same, would we want to trade or not?
Okay, I understand what you're asking now. I think that I didn't get your question earlier properly. So this is when you start to look at the draft, right? You have to ask yourself, it's kind of a case-by-case basis of, is it worth it to trade both safe lane towers?
Yeah.
The questions you'd be asking yourself is, if we show up to this defense, instead of pushing this, if that's what we choose to do as a team, are we more likely to kill them? So the questions would be, how strong are our heroes right now?
Are we early game power spike heroes? Do we have dive? Do we have lockdown? Can we prevent them from leaving?
Exactly. Are we capable of taking this fight and winning? If the answer is yes, defend the tower. Don't trade the tower. Go top, kill them, and then make your way down bottom at some point and take their tower, right? If there's a push happening and your team has the capability to fight and win the fight, you should always do it. Making trades when you don't have to is not an ideal thing.
Yeah. Just like when you're a weak team and you have a bounty hunter and then you have like a Nature's Prophet that's only playing macro style, that's when you want to play macro, and that's where you do intentionally rat to avoid the fight.
So the thing about Dota is it's not so black and white, right? It's not like me telling you that, yes, trading the tower is good or trading the tower is bad. That doesn't apply to every game.
Yeah.
That's when you have to just kind of consider what's going on. And as you play, you get a sense of how strong you are based on how some of the engagements went, right? I would say, taking a look at their heroes, what did I mention earlier? Like, who on this team do you think has ability to win an early game fight on Radiant team.
Okay, so I get your point. Is who has the early game power spike? Who has the stronger overall team right now and wants to be doing team fights? So that's a really solid question with the associated answer, case by case, that I can take forward to decide if I want to defend our tier 1 and trade, or if I want to defend our tier 1 and prevent trade and fight them, or if I want to kill their tier 1 because we don't want to fight and we would give up a trade, or we would back off if they are defending it. So who is stronger early? And I agree with you. If I look at our comp, I'll say we're stronger early. So it makes sense. That,
much stronger.
Yeah, much stronger.
Much stronger. Like, it's kind of pathetic how little that they can do versus your draft in the early game. They're cooldown dependent on this Chronosphere, right? Because their lockdown is lacking. They have a Roots, and they have like Cold Snap from Invoker and Lucent Beam. So their lockdown is not good. Void Spirit has the ability to instantly burst either of the supports.
We're in fact so strong that we will definitely be able to defend our tier 1 tower and kill theirs. So trade doesn't even become... it's not a... We would never take that trade. It would be the worst trade deal in history.
Yeah.
Then
even if they get a 5-man chrono, it would take Crystal Maiden to get a freezing field in a position where she wasn't blown up before the fight already started, and Invoker to come in and cast some spells for them to even win the fight. If you guys get 5-man chronoed and you don't die, you're gonna kill them all. Like, it's just absurd, right? So in this case, you guys want to take as much of the map as possible. And yeah, all of these things that I'm talking about, this is team concepts. So you might be asking yourself, okay, how can I do this individually?
Do I personally,
Yeah, for the most part, it's not that easy. But as a position 4, you are in a good position to lead the fights. Because the position 4 is the hero that does a lot of shot calling early on. You can buy smokes, you do a little bit of aggressive warding, and you pair with your Void Spirit. We talked about how good the pairing is.
Yeah.
So you and Void Spirit can make the calls to move around together. So you don't even necessarily need all of your heroes, because Spirit Breaker can charge in from wherever he is. And if PA isn't there, she's happily farming, that's still a good thing.
Yep. Makes sense. And would you say that the second concept, besides who has the better early game strength, in order to, once again, back to trade or no trade, if it becomes an option, would be how much farming space do the enemy cores need? And in this case, of course, Spirit Breaker's go-to is to find and destroy heroes. Same for Void. Whereas the current go-to for Luna, Faithless, and even Invoker is farming jungle and lane. So we would much rather shrink their farming space than to split the map.
Yeah, you give them nothing, and then you just take Rush with your PA Desolator, and you can end the game really early on because of how cooldown dependent they are. And that's what would happen in a higher level game with a draft like this.
Even higher level?
This would absolutely happen because this Radiant draft would just get demolished early on by the Dire draft. Yeah,
that makes sense. I find it hard to imagine even higher level than Legend 1, but.
I mean, you're right. You're right. That's hard. That's hard to top.
Okay.
I feel you. But yeah, so this is just concepts again that we're talking about. Obviously, things will be different in practice. But that's why we're going to play the live games. But I just want you to kind of understand why this tower needs to go down first.
Yep.
Like, so in theory, you get that, right? You want to take away these camps from the enemies. You want to give it to your carry instead, and you want to play on other lanes.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. So how you do this is honestly you have to communicate. You have to communicate with your Void Spirit. That's the hero that you're gonna like. I would be playing with my Void 24/7 in this game, and I would say, hey, let's go bottom. Let's find this Invoker. Let's get this tower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh. Makes sense.
Okay. Let's go to the pain that you mentioned. I need to see it.
Yeah, we can kind of play it fast, and you can kind of see the concept. First chrono got some kills with the Sunstrike.
No, I'm hiding in the trees.
A little bit of hiding.
Right. It's really funny to see a Grimstroke with a mech. I mean, it's cool though. Have you ever played Murano?
Once. Just the once from the A to Z challenge. I did like play every hero once. You know, arrowing a creep camp every now and then while laning. Okay, so moments like this, right? Can we roll it back a bit? Because this is the one that gives me a lot of heartache, like as it's happening. So this happens a lot when people are ahead in Legend. So actually, this is what I wanted to ask you about. If we can even go back a bit further.
Look at your corpse.
I know. Okay, look.
Oh.
A little bit back. No, 10 seconds back. I think will be great. So pause. This is where we get together for a smoke. I don't remember who initiated it, but at some point someone will get the idea of smoking. I think I asked for it, I had one, and then Witch Doctor used it instead. So what usually happens, people draw back for whatever reason, usually not with a clear purpose in mind, in Legend 1 and below. Someone will say, let's smoke. We do it. And then everyone that was in it will start inexorably drawing themselves towards the enemy map, usually straight uphill into an into a jungle, without like a clear idea of who we're hunting for. And then the first person you see, you blow every single ult, and then you keep going to the next person, even if that's on the high ground. So let's play this one time speed, and we can kind of see how that goes. I wanted to ask you, what would be like a good way to consistently use smokes well? In this case, I remember someone, Void was sad that he was left out of the smoke, and then we saw Maiden dewarding, so Spirit Breaker instantly goes in. Right, we are not there yet. He decides to dust, use his ult, which I think is pretty extreme. I think he ults, or did he not? No, he didn't. Okay, so pause. Now.
Oh, you don't have your shard yet. If you have your shard at this point of the game, it's so sick.
But I have my cancer.
you definitely, once you start 5-manning, you want to make sure you have shard on Grim. It's just beyond good.
Are you trying a 15-minute shard with him?
You're trying to. I personally get it after lens. Like,
Okay.
I will go lens into shard.
Okay.
But it depends on how the game goes. Like, if you're doing very poorly and the cast range item drops, the tier 2 one, you can just get the shard without the lens.
Okay, get it. I got it. So here, pause. Here we tried to get someone else. We used a whole bunch of stuff. In my mind, this is when we go back. We failed the follow-up kill. We got one. We used a lot. We don't want to dive towers. So now I feel like we're getting baited by Spirit Breaker, and I'm thinking we shouldn't go further. But I also feel empathy. You can see kind of how I want to go in and out. I decide to go out because we're so deep, and then I can't go out anymore because Luna came in with her ult from behind. So this is like 4 people died. We were extremely far ahead. Can we look at the win probability?
Win probability? Does that even exist?
Yeah.
Oh.
You got
Look,
me into
we are
this and now
72%
I can't
upper
get
dog.
out.
We
Thanks
just
for
used
the
one
amazing
smoke
content and much
and
more
an
to
ult.
come.
We got one
Cheers.
maiden, and in my mind, we can just pull back and start pushing out the lane. Note how our mid lane is so far back, so we cannot do any damage on the tower. So we're only here for a kill, and then we get 0 objectives. So it feels like a pretty weak play, in my opinion. We could still go for the bottom lane tower from here. I don't think this is a high probability win chance, but we've been winning so much that people aren't thinking afraid anymore. So what do I do here? Do I just turn around and go home now?
I would say you just scream after the Crystal Maiden kill. You yell, "Go back, go back, go back."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot of really good things, actually. So when you smoke, you have to have reasons for smoking. A mistake that a lot of lower MMR players do is that once they see a couple of their allies in the same space, they just press smoke. Like, oh, people are here, let's just smoke, right? But the question is, what are you doing? What cooldowns do the enemies have or not have right now? Are we doing this next to Roshan? Do we have wards placed? Do we know which target we're going for? So usually for smoke ganks, ideally the situations that you want set up are your lanes being pushed out. So when this happened, do you see where your mid lane is?
Yeah.
Not great. I mean, the bot lane, we've talked about this disaster of a lane. I don't know how this tower is still alive. And these 3 lanes are pushed out. So just based off of that wasn't time for a smoke.
Yeah.
So in cases like this, like the smokes are worth it, even if the lanes are not in a good space. They're worth it. For example, let's say if on this ward that Crystal Maiden dewarded, you saw Faceless Void, right? If you're all here and you see Faceless Void farming this camp or this camp under vision, smoke and kill him. Like, you have a target in mind. Smoking for a core kill is always worth it. You see him, he's close to you, you get that kill and you leave. Because your lanes are not pushed in, there's no objective to play for, as you mentioned. Like, you're not going to get this tower is still up, and you're not near Roshan. There's absolutely no reason to go further than the pickoff that you guys did.
Yeah.
So obviously, and ends in a disaster for everybody.
Let's say if I was saying get back, and nobody go back, I leave. Better 3 deaths than 4, or better everyone idiot together?
I mean, You, I would say as a good rule of thumb is to die with the homies. Like you're in it together, but not at this stage of the game, because like in a situation like this, it's gonna be a disaster for you,
Yeah.
right? Your ward got dewarded.
Yep.
You're smoking into no vision. You got a good pick. The pick on Crystal Maiden wasn't bad. It wasn't bad if you guys left. If you left and let's say worked your way bottom after the Crystal Maiden kill, that would have been good. But to extend into their tower with no vision, with no eyes on Luna,
I hate it.
after Void didn't get soul bound, obviously it's gonna be a disaster.
Yeah.
But I'm actually glad that you think about smokes in this way, because too often they're just pressed for no reason at all. Like they have to be done with something in mind. If you guys have nothing in mind and you're smoking for the sake of smoking, you're better off farming. Like trust me, farming will take you far in Dota.
Yeah.
Like it's something that can never be wrong for you to farm.
1 in 10 games, someone absolutely goes off in voice chat. Oh, we're only farming. I'm like, isn't that good?
Yeah. That's just life, you know. It's the Dota world.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a bad fight that happens. You know, they get a net worth swing. Oh my God, this Void found his way back into the game.
Yeah, like
He's
PA
always been
also
back in the
stayed.
game.
He stayed in a 1v4.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. I guess a way to prevent it from happening in the first place, like if you think that your team doesn't have discipline enough to go back when you call it, is to just not smoke in the first place.
Yeah,
Like,
it wasn't
so-
my smoke, but I did support
Yeah.
maybe using one.
I think so. In a situation like this, if you didn't feel comfortable going for that play, you can just say, hey guys, how about let's get this tower first? Let's place some wards and then we can smoke.
Yeah.
So you stop it from happening already.
Yeah.
Because, like I mentioned, the hero that was on vision when you guys decided to smoke was the CM.
Yeah, unimportant. We're looking for Faceless and we're looking for Invoker.
Yeah. Those are the high priority heroes. So I understand doing it. It's something that most people kind of fall for as a trap in Dota. But actively thinking about smoking really can go a long way.
Oh.
And like we mentioned, lanes in Dota are super, super valuable. And even though you guys have a lot of kills, your lanes are not actually that great because your team was kind of like run at them without trying to establish map control at any point in the game.
Would you say it's better in general to smoke when the lanes are at our tower, at their tower, or in the middle?
Oh, at their tower. Like ideally, in the late game, if the lanes are pushed into their towers, that's when you smoke. In the mid game, if they're in the middle, it's okay to smoke. They don't know where you are. They think, oh, they might be in their woods. They might be waiting for us. Like, they don't know. But if your lanes are where they were when you guys smoked, which were here, here, and here, that looks like a smoke.
Yeah.
They didn't know, by the way. They just reacted. It's not like they read your smoke or anything. They just reacted to the dive that happened. You know, they were kind of spoon-fed that fight.
Yep.
But yeah, that is something to always think about, is where your lanes are located. But that's also why I really love Grimstroke, and I mentioned that hero too.
You can fix the lane,
Yeah, you can push out lanes so easily on that hero and just kind of open up the map for your team. Okay, where's this disaster of a fight?
Because it ends up going kind of okay again, though Faceless does become an issue sometimes. I think this is where Oppo probably throws, if I'm looking at it now. Bounty isn't here. Well, actually not quite yet. Nope, it's a disaster.
Wow. They got back into the game after that.
Yep.
Okay. So that fight, being taken blind, with no vision, not a good thing.
No.
Not a good thing, right? So another thing that you can always be thinking about if you're playing 4 or 5 is whether or not they're on your vision or if you're on their vision. So if the map is dark, it's always a good call to not take the fight, because you have to assume that they know something that you don't, or they see you.
I didn't take it, right? I just stayed near sympathetically.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm just talking about the concept here and how you should kind of be approaching the game as a Dota player.
Yeah.
So in situations where they're pushing mid, let's say you have vision somewhere here, or you've dewarded somewhere here and here behind your tower, you can defend this tower, even without vision necessarily. But that's not really the case. Like obviously this is something that has nothing to do with you, but I think applying or like remembering these can help you in making the calls, because a big part of supporting is making the correct calls for your team.
Can we roll back a bit? Because I'm noticing I have wards now. Can we roll back to before the fight started? Could I have prevented this, perhaps? So I remember we got wiped, and I started, like, just kind of hitting the pineapples. Oh, we smoked again. Okay. Oh, yeah. So she's already
The
dead.
disaster is PA died, and you guys took the fight anyway.
Yeah. Okay, I see what happened. Yeah, I remember being
also,
upset
you lost
here.
your vision, too. Yeah.
So PA got chronoed, and then Spirit Breaker charged, and I thought surely he's going to cancel because she's already dead. But he didn't cancel. He never cancels. So then we die one by one. So
yeah,
I would say
unfortunately.
It was not, if we had smoke, I wanted to go to their ancient to maybe find someone and play some wards at the same time.
Yeah, unfortunate. It's kind of it's sad how Void had a game where he shouldn't have, but it just happens. I feel like I'm gonna hold you up too much with all the conceptual stuff because I do want you to.
Let's look at the juicy bit.
Not be overwhelmed.
Look, we came back. Yeah. So we came back. I don't know exactly how it happened. We did stuff because we still have the better team fight outside of Chrono, like every time. So we came back. Win chance is probably back up to 80-90%. You want to take a look?
And you look at win chance often?
Just to show chat, right? Like,
okay.
Look, 93%. It takes Herculean efforts to throw this one. That's how I'm thinking. Okay, pause. This is where it happens.
Okay.
So we just take Aegis. So now everyone's confidence is booming again. We start to take control of their ancient. They're already back down to the high ground. We have Aegis. All 4 of us are in the top left of the map. This is the moment of the game. But, cursedly, can we check whose observer ward that is on the outpost to the on the high ground next to the Radiant outpost?
Planted by.
No, we have this one, but next to the outpost. This one. Who plays this observer ward?
It says Beloshka did.
Okay.
Call me Witch Doctor.
So it's his fault that Spirit Breaker had vision of Maiden.
Wait, it's not a bad thing.
No, it is, because our Spirit Breaker is brainless.
Why is it a bad thing?
Well, because he's brainless. He does 1v5 charge away from the enemy team next to the high ground. Oh, what are we supposed to do now? Like, the moment he hit charge, right after we got Roshan, before the lanes are fixed, before we could possibly be there, I'm thinking he's going to use everything on Maiden, and it's going to bait us into a fight next to their high ground. What do I do? At this moment, I was like a deer in the headlights, because I hate this situation. I hate that he charges the position 5, uses every single thing, BKB, what's it called, Nether Strike, and we have to run across the map to go and help him. I guess one thing is that they did use Chrono, so that's kind of nice. But what do we do here? What would you do in this situation?
Okay, so you have control of this outpost.
Yep.
You have vision here and here.
No, that's their vision.
Isn't that Beloshka?
This is ours, but
yeah.
this is ours, but this one's theirs.
Yeah, true. So you have vision. You have vision here. You have control of the outpost. You have Aegis. And you got the pick on Crystal Maiden. Okay. So the Spirit Breaker died. He has no buyback, which kind of sucks. I think making these plays, by the way, when you're going into their base, should happen when at least a couple of your heroes have buyback, because they can go very wrong. But from where I'm looking at it right now, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, he died, sure, he diebacked, but what ended up happening was Void used Chronosphere.
Yeah.
So that's not something that PA has to worry about. Because PA dies to Void and Chrono because of Chronosphere, right? He has an MKB, he can kill her.
Yeah,
but
so you would immediately come over to help?
Oh, absolutely, right? We'd be screaming, like, no Chrono, no Chrono. Your Void Spirit went in first and got hexed, that's kind of sad.
But look at me. I'm not joining this stupid... I was already pissed about the amount of times that he went by himself on some target that's impossibly far away that we can't join. And I thought the 4 of us can just stay here.
From your perspective.
Let one guy die. Like, the moment he hits charge, I hate life so much. I think the 4 of us just stick together. Let this idiot splatter his own brains over the road, and we'll just watch and stay together. But the moment he went in, 3 of my allies came to join, and I thought we shouldn't be, and I actually didn't.
Why is Void Spirit invisible? What's wrong with Dota replays?
Yeah. Well, if you rewind it again, it's fine. So he immediately used Boots of Travel.
Okay.
I could have TP'd right now to the outpost.
So this is actually your Void Spirit joining the fight in front of you. You have to join the fight. Like that's your cue to TP. You have to TP. Like in this moment, these late game fights, you have to make sure you're there. Because in these situations, especially when you have no buyback and your team already started the fight, you either win the game or you lose the game. So the question is, are you going to be part of the winning the game or part of losing the game? Like, which one are you going to be? You're not going to know unless you're there. But like this part right here should have been your cue. Like, I can understand you not wanting to go, especially if Void Spirit stayed and pushed with you. But him joining the fight and like seeing your whole team congregating around this area, seeing the chrono be placed, even though maybe it would have been best to wait until you guys have buyback gold, which is, of course, you want to push with buybacks because often that's where games are thrown. Even if you have an Aegis, you can lose high ground fights, and then they can just run down mid. That didn't happen. So you should have TP'd, for sure.
You think it is, teamwork-wise, and my position and everyone's position-wise, it is correct to join, to do the thing together because we have enough vision, we have a place to TP to. But I'm getting from you even think that it is theoretically correct because they used Chrono. Like, it's a fine trade, you even think, what he did.
Definitely a good trade, Chronosphere for your offlane SB when you have Aegis, means that they're not going to be able to like push or take anything. You guys could have chosen to disengage there. That would have been good. Your team chose to fight. The second you saw that your team was fighting, actually, it's hard to tell whether your team is fighting or not because you have to TP to outpost, right? And it's going to take time to walk there, so you're going to be late to the fight. Once you saw your Void Spirit TPing, you should have TP'd. In the late game, where your cores go, you go. You don't want to ever be caught playing side lanes alone. Because you have to be ready for these big team fights.
I get the empathetic part of like joining when they do, but you even think it is like the Chronosphere is more important than his life.
In this case, depending on what you were trying to do, like it's never bad to trade Chrono when you have something like an Aegis because they're not going to get anything out of it and you can keep pressure, right? You can choke them out with your SB dead anyway. They don't have Chrono, they have no means to. Wow. So I would say that, yeah, it's fine. The only bad thing about it was him not having buyback, but you guys wouldn't have lost anything if you had disengaged and it wouldn't have been a bad trade. But what I want to emphasize to you is like if you're going to approach matchmaking in a way where you want to make sure that these late game scenarios go in your favor most of the time, like you just want to be with your cores. Wherever your team goes, you go. Your Void Spirit TPs, you instantly TP because the 1 or 2 seconds that you're late to a fight can make a huge difference in whether the fight is won or less.
Okay.
Especially as a Grimstroke. Like let's say you were there to cast the Inkswell Shard on your Void Spirit, he would have dispelled the Hex, for example. And he did go in a little bit preemptively, like he did waste his BKB here.
I could have been here already. I think I could have been here at 36 if you want to roll it back. Like
36. I mean that's fine.
Yeah,
I got what you're saying.
Yeah. So the Inkswell dispels at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could take away part of Scythe of Ice.
Okay. It can for sure. It also heals at the end of the pop, but I'm watching this late game situation too, and the enemies, once they have this Hex, they have the ability to kill one of your cores by locking them down. They have a lot of damage. So at this point, this is where you should have a force staff. Like once one of your cores gets hexed, you have to be able to force them away. So that's an item that you always want to look at and always have, especially in these like really high CC bursty lineups. So like what happened towards the end. So that's an item that would have done a lot more for you.
Even if Witch Doctor already has one, right? Like the more the better.
Yeah, you need as many. Yeah. You need as many as you can. But in that situation in particular, like you should have TP'd with your Void instantly.
Okay, got it.
And always keep it as a rule of thumb that in the late game, just always be there. Because being there with your team to win the fight or lose the fight is the best thing you can do. If you make the call to go back and they don't go back, you still have to be there because the outcome is that you lose the game and you're not there.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I can see how frustrating it was, especially with the net worth lead that you guys had and how it just ended abruptly. Does the game just end afterwards? I mean, they have no buybacks, so I think
like it's unnecessary to do like long shots when you're so far ahead. Like I would do that from a 5% win chance, not from a 95% win chance.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a long shot though. Like what Spiritbreaker did, killing the Crystal Maiden on Vision and getting chronoed, not a bad thing. If the team chose to kind of be a little bit more disciplined with how they took the fight, it's fine. Because Chronosphere being down and the gem that Crystal Maiden had being gone, like you guys can just choke them out entirely, right? You can kind of keep them in their base because Radiant are very limited at this stage of the game, especially versus Aegis, and making their plays depending on Chrono. Like they're entirely dependent on this spell. So it's not really a long shot for Spiritbreaker to kill somebody here because you're mostly controlling this part of the map anyway. Like all of this map is yours. They can only come out here. So typically you do kind of want to punish the heroes that step out. Like the execution was sloppy, but the idea wasn't bad.
Okay.
The fight that happened afterwards, the diving and all that, that's not great. And doing it when the team isn't together, that's not great. But I do think that you should have been there.
I understand.
But I can see how this game is frustrating. Like you have this huge net worth lead, and suddenly the game's just over. And that's the thing as a oh boy.
Fountain dives. Again, again, it's like I think these are the two moves that just cancels the game. Like I don't know why they couldn't get out of the mindset of like going into fountain. Yeah, we could just hit towers. I think there's one more. There was one other moment too where we could just kill their barracks, but my PA died because I didn't have Force Staff. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good thing that you reflected on, right? For every time that your carry dies and you wish that you had a Force Staff, the next time you're gonna build a Force Staff.
Are we building Force Staff on almost every support?
It depends on what you're playing for. You can't really take things as a blanket statement in Dota, but generally, yes, it's a really good support item. I prioritize it much more highly than Glimmer Cape because Glimmer Cape got nerfed. In games like this, like they're getting tracked anyway. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I saw Yule's Force Staff and Glimmer as interchangeable based on the situation. So I spent a lot of processing power, what limited I have, to decide between the three.
Yeah,
but Force
actually,
Staff
I
is
like
really good.
I like that you brought that up because it's something that I want to bring up. So you have to think very, very well as a support about your first item because often your first item will be your only item.
Yeah.
Or it'll be a very long time until you get another item. So actually asking yourself, is my first item a Yule's? Is it a Force Staff? Is it a Glimmer Cape? You have to be able to do this because every game's going to be different. But that first item is where you're going to have the most impact.
Yeah.
Because there aren't that going to be many resources for you. So you think to yourself, like for example, you're playing against a Riki support. Which item of the support items, the cheap ones, do you think you go for versus Riki?
Force Staff.
Yeah. Let's say you're playing versus Ursa carry. Which one would you pick?
Yule's?
Yeah, exactly. Let's say you're playing Crystal Maiden versus minimal stuns.
Glimmer?
Yeah, you Glimmer and you can just get your freezing field off, right? You can try to have high impact that way. So you kind of just ask yourself. But that first item that you get really does make a difference. Because let's say you start building an Aether Lens on a support, and then the enemy Riki starts destroying your team with his darts and his clouds, and then you're kind of committed to finishing your lens, but then you really wish you had a Force Staff. And at that point, the team is snowballing off of their Riki advantage. You kind of like, you're punching yourself in the face. Why did I not build the Force Staff?
Yeah.
So you have to just be able to make sure that you're asking yourself the correct questions about this first item. So cores have the privilege of always being able to kind of get what they want. At that point, there's a lot more farm in them. But yeah, your most impact will come with that first item as support.
Okay, that's good. I think something that I didn't want to admit, that I had also more responsibility this game on the loss, even though I disdained the way my cores were playing. I could have done more, so that's a good humbling moment.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping me see it.
Honestly, I think that it definitely was bad decision making by everybody towards the end, not just you in not joining, but them in diving into the enemy base without their Grimstroke. That's also a bad decision. But I think that your item build this game was like truly dog shit. I like the thought that went into the Greaves, but overall, like a lot of the items that you needed, like a Force Staff, a Lotus Orb, like an earlier Aether Lens, things like that. Because Aether Lens helps you cast these support items too, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just not there in favor of things that you don't need as much.
No, it's not that bad.
Something like an Octarine core, which is very expensive, like a hex does more for the same amount of gold. Because then suddenly you're locking down the void, you're double hexing in your soulbind.
I got Octarine, so I have more Aeon discs.
I mean, that's something. Octarine is a cool item. Once you get it late game and you have a quickening charm or a spell prism, you feel very cool on supports like Grimstroke.
Well,
But
the
yeah,
reason may not have
overall,
been good, but at least I had a reason. But I accept your judgment.
okay, I'm glad that you do. But also, just know that in Dota, like nothing ever happens perfectly, and there's always something that you could have done more.
Yeah.
So even though, especially I think at Legend and ratings like that, it's really frustrating when your team is obviously doing the right thing and the wrong thing, and you know that it's wrong. You have to kind of like examine your own gameplay and see what you could have done differently.
Yeah.
Because there's always something that you could have done differently in retrospect, whether it's itemization, whether it's a different kind of smoke, whether it's maybe forgetting to deward a ward that they picked you off on, things like that. You can look back at it and it does help.
Yeah. Thank you.